I guess first off, if there are any adjustments to the agenda?
Yeah, we're gonna add a liquor license application to the agenda because it needs to be done before the next meeting. I just got it today. But we can do that towards the end.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Then we'll move on to the acceptance of the minutes of November 4th.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented. There were a couple little typos I noticed, but I don't think they're anything important, and I'm not seeing them now, so not to worry.
Okay. All right, with that note, I guess I'll second it, since Scott's not here. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then, new business. We will begin with our state representative.
One of our state representatives.
One of our state representatives, yes. Mrowicki.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you've got the floor.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. And I appreciate the opportunity to meet and to serve you and to be part of this community, as we were just saying with Maddie here and seeing the torch being picked up by some of the younger people that have come through Putney. It's great to see. We want to keep as many young people in Vermont as we can. So.
That's right.
And actually, we're doing better with that. So probably mention that a little bit in a while. We're getting ready for the next session. We'll be back up there January 5th. It's the second year of this biennium, and we'll hopefully be building on some of what we did last year. So I'm here to share a little bit and also to hear what's happening on the ground level here for you here. One of the big bills that we moved through last year that has been years, maybe longer in the making, was the water quality bill. It's gotten to the point in Lake Champlain that there are towns now lowering the value of lands on the lakefront because some of the areas have been so polluted they're losing value. It's a 2.2 billion part of our economy, Lake Champlain, and if we don't take care of it, it's not going to take care of us. So my district mate David Dean has been pushing for this. He's certainly been a champion of clean water for a long time, and finally was able to get a bill passed. And it doesn't just affect Lake Champlain; it affects all Vermont waters. Now, one of the differences is in Lake Champlain there's a real problem with phosphorus levels, and a lot of that's due to agricultural runoff. It's probably one of the biggest things, but not just that. A lot of runoff from the developed areas there. Connecticut River, we've got a problem though with nitrogen. When you get to the mouth of the Connecticut River, there's now a big dead zone from the accumulated nitrogen that's been, as it gets downriver. It's a big problem. So what we're trying to do is help establish limits, help establish necessary resources to address this, because it's a challenge for businesses, especially small farmers, if they haven't already been practicing that. We're pretty lucky here in Windham County. Most of the farmers who have river land have been very conscious of what they're doing, and not a contributor to the problem, but up and down the Connecticut, it's not that, it's not so. And people have asked me, what are the other states doing? And I have to say, well, Vermont's actually the last one to the dance on this one, because the other states have already done their work and have started the work. So whether it's Lake Champlain, Quebec, New York, they've done their part. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut have already effected some things. So we're coming late to this. So it's important for us. And the legacy we want to leave, whether it's clean water, clean land, clean air, we want to leave it cleaner than we found it. And hopefully this will this will help to address those problems. Probably the same as last year, our budget's going to be a concern. We have, looking ahead to us, we have good news. You know, it's interesting to hear how different people spin what's happening, but the reality is we're doing a pretty good job managing our state finances. And that's not me saying that, that's our bonding companies. Standard & Poor's, Fitch, who's the other big one? Moody's. All gave us our ratings recently. Two of them gave us our top rating. The other one gave us the second top rating. I don't know if it's AA or AAA. And the reasons they gave was our fiscal management. They feel like we're staying on top of things. We're keeping ahead of our problems. When we have problems that can come up, we're dealing with them as soon as they happen. An example is last year we had a projected budget gap at the beginning of the session, and of course we balanced our budget. We have a smaller projected budget gap this year, and for good reasons though, I think. If it weren't for the increase in people signing up for Medicaid, we'd have a balanced budget this year. That's the tough news, because we're going to have to find $30–40 million to pay for it. The good news is those are people that now have health insurance, and that's what we want. We, along with Massachusetts, we have the best coverage in the United States. I think that's something to be proud of. In the long run, that saves us money and also increases the quality of life. So certainly there's two sides to that, but we feel good about the fact that we have a high number. It's down under 4%, 3.5%, I think. It's getting close to, you know, what we call full coverage, similar to full employment, and which is another thing we're doing pretty well, because our unemployment rate is down at about the same rate. It's under 4%. One of the challenges we're finding, though, and you probably hear something from Laura about this later, is we've got more jobs and people to fill them in right now. And I know I was at a meeting with other state legislators and talking to somebody from Minnesota, and they're doing what Canada's doing right now, because they're in a similar situation, and they're doing targeted immigration. If they have a need for specific skill, they look at the world map and say, where can these people be brought in? And that's something that I think we need to start looking at as well. We already have a number of immigrant workers in Vermont. Our agricultural scene probably wouldn't be possible without the immigrant workers we have. And the farmers I've talked to say they're some of their best workers. So I think if we can open up our perspective on who we need, we can keep training Vermonters to meet the jobs that are here, but I think we need to look beyond our borders as well, and might be helpful for our economy. It's kind of a good problem to have when you have more jobs, and they're good jobs too. They're skilled jobs, but I would say that maybe not all the jobs are going to be filled by Vermonters. Good thing is that hopefully it'll give the message that Vermont is the place to stay. One of the things we did, we were concerned about where our young people were going, and not all of them staying in Vermont, or not a percentage that we wanted. And one of the pieces we found was a lot of kids were buying a narrative that's been spoken for a long time, that Vermont's bad for business and there aren't jobs here. And the reality is we're good for business if you're looking at the new economy, the green economy. We're creating jobs in that realm, and there are a lot of other areas, service jobs that are decent paying jobs that are available out there. So I think the future is brighter for Vermont than it's been for a while. On the local scene, probably a couple of things you might want to know. Last year I was approached by a Putney resident who'd been bitten by a dog. And what she said was she found out that Vermont's one of the few states that still has, it doesn't have a strict liability law. And asked if I could look to statutory relief in that regard. So I introduced a bill which would change that law here in Vermont. And it's interesting because when I put it out there, I started hearing from people all over the state for whom this had been a problem. So it's not just a Putney problem, it's something beyond the scope of what's happened here.
So does that mean liability on the owner, the dog owner's part?
Yeah. Some people call Vermont's current law first bite free. Because what people have encountered was, even if people or dogs, animals have been severely damaged or even killed, there's no recourse.
In an attack by another animal.
That's right,
about.
yeah. So we're going to take a look at that, I think, this year. It didn't get looked at last year, priorities, and we'll see what happens this year, but I think it's something we need to look at. And it's an old law. We go through the process of updating laws, and it's probably something, now that we're in the 21st century, we should bring up to the 21st century. I work on the Human Services Committee, so there's 25 standing committees in the House and Senate, and we are looking at a number of, on a regular basis, what we look at is everything from child care to elder care. We are especially keen on promoting early child development, because what we know of brain development, age 0 to 3 is when the majority of your brain development happens. We want to make sure that kids are getting the positive stimulation they need to help their brain develop the architecture of the brain for later learning. On the other end of the spectrum, we're going to be looking at a bill in my committee that will protect elders from predators, from financial predators. And the sad thing to say about that is that often the predators are the people who were entrusted to protect those people. So we're going to need to tweak some of our laws, our banking laws, to allow limited access for law enforcement to look into this, because the problem is right now, if there's a suspicion that somebody's bank account's being cleaned out, often the person they have to go to for permission is the person that's doing it.
Right.
And by the time that happens, it could be gone. So it's one of the things we're going to look at. For me, it's important. There are 3 groups of people I think I especially feel that we're there to be the voice for, and that's our younger children, our elders, and the disabled. And this is an area where, unfortunately, our elders are encountering predators on their finances, and I think we need to stand up for them. Another bill that Senator White was instrumental in passing in the Senate last year is going to help create greater access to dental care. Most of us have, with our medical providers, encountered either a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant. That seems to have worked pretty well, and there's a real shortage of dental opportunities for people to access dental care in Vermont. What we're going to do is create a mid-level practitioner like that. Other states have done it. It's helped address the backlog, but there's a group that doesn't want this to happen, and the dentists don't want this change. But I think when we went through this, I'm not sure when. Do you remember, Josh, when we first started seeing physician's assistants in 20?
Around the turn of the
Yeah.
century. I
Yeah.
mean, they started, it became an issue of them being able to practice without actually having an MD on site.
Yeah.
Right around
Yeah.
late 90s, somewhere in there.
It's worked out pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
I think the same thing in this regard. People need access to dental care. With what we know now, more of us, that the connection between your dental health and the rest of your physical health is really strong. That people need access to this, so that's something we're going to do. The Senate passed it last year, sent it over to the House, and we'll probably be working on that. on the local front, it's nice to see. I think we're not far from having our park and ride opened up.
Pretty close.
Getting pretty close, so.
Which would have been really helpful today because there was a lot of cars parked here.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, they're still playing golf and the real estate agents meet here on Wednesdays.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so
soon,
soon.
yeah.
And do we know how soon?
Well, when I called Wayne a couple weeks ago, he told me
A couple
a
weeks.
couple weeks.
Well, I heard from the new the former commissioner and the new commissioner that they hope by the end of the year for sure. But I think.
Oh, that's funny because he really told me, he was like, I don't know, within the next week or two.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
It
maybe-
looks-
It's gotta be
Pretty
pretty close.
close,
I mean,
yeah.
he did tell me that the bike shelter and something else
Yeah,
was not gonna be there right off because of this fire they had
Yeah.
in the building where they were building it, so, but it's coming.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's getting there.
right on schedule. Not quite, but
It'll be good to have though.
it will be good to have. Everywhere else in the state where they've used them, the capacity gets filled up pretty
Yeah.
fast. And, you know, for those of us who believe that climate change is real and we need to do something, it's one way to get cars off the roads.
Yeah.
And it just makes sense if we can carpool. One of the things that we might want to start thinking about locally is how do we if we can organize local carpooling.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of other things I could talk about, but I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I do want to hear concerns you might have.
There's tons of them. I guess ones that kind of affect state level, I don't know, offhand.
146?
Act 46?
Act 40, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Act
146,
46, not
yeah.
146.
Well,
Act 148 is the other one I want to
Yeah.
ask about. so.
you know, it's interesting to see how that's rolling out. Yeah, met with the school board last week, and I didn't vote for that. I think it's something that was rushed through. The process that is happening now is what many of us asked to happen before we put together a bill, so we could bring support for whatever's needed. I'm not so sure one size fits all is needed in Vermont. You know, our schools are doing a pretty good job here. Our supervisory union's doing a pretty good job. We've already done the consolidation pieces in special ed, transportation, that many other towns haven't. You know, we've got the low-hanging fruit already. You know, the reality is that I don't see the promises in this coming true. I don't think it's going to save a lot of money, and I don't know that it's going to improve student performance the way some people hope it will. One of the good questions is, what else can we do differently in the future? And I think that's a good question at any time. I don't know that we need to put towns in this position and schools in this position where they feel like they're playing a very critical game of musical chairs to find out which schools stay open and which don't, where kids go to school, where they don't. It's raised the anxiety level of a lot of people around. I'm not sure it was necessary to go about it in this hurried fashion. So we'll see how the process unfolds. Certainly we want better for our kids all the time, but I want to make note that I think our schools do a good job already. You know, the challenge of costs is something that we're probably always going to face, same as in medicine. It's expensive. And one of the concerns has been the level of teacher to student ratios now, and I think that's sort of a natural selection process that's unfolding as we've had, I think, over 500 retirements this year. Statewide, the wave of retirements that we thought was going to happen 5 years ago is happening now. And I think that's one way we can right-size faculties. But it's always hard to say what's the right size, you know, with special ed needs. And, you know, we're not building widgets. You know, we're trying to educate our kids and educate the whole child, so I don't know that we can make it simple in any way, so we'll see how that goes. I think there's gonna be some tweaks, though, definitely. The spending cap, I think people are looking at, because as an example, I think some towns are looking at as an unfunded mandate, because we have another law that's asking schools to start pre-Ks, which we've had already in here. But if they do that, then they go over the spending cap and they get penalized. So I don't know how we can really look ourselves in the mirror if we don't change that. So hopefully we'll be looking at some other things too, and keep working at that so we get a bill that really helps our kids.
So the other one that made me say 146 was 148.
Okay.
And I think one of the concerns for us with Act 148 is just, we don't feel like we really know what's going on as far as how it's gonna pan out for us as to what our district is gonna do for us, et cetera. And I don't know whether you're seeing things around the state that could be helpful for us in knowing, you know, for example, with our recycling program at the fire station, is our assessment going to go down if they cancel that? Are we? It's hard to tell what we're going to be getting from our district.
Yeah.
And I don't. It may not be a question you can answer, Mike.
Yeah.
I don't know, but.
Well, it's a good question, and it's actually it's kind of a hot question because all over the state, it's a big change. I mean, there's environmental concerns at the root of this, and practical concerns. You know, what do we do with our trash, and how do we reduce our streams? We certainly will be looking for what the best practices are and what works everywhere. You know, Cynthia may have as much information. Who's our representative to?
It's Dan Toomey, and
Toomey.
actually we're gonna talk about the
Okay.
assessment. They did give us an assessment
Oh, they did.
that
Okay.
includes the
Having
them for right now. They're
Yeah.
still, it's
Okay.
kind of up in the air, but as of right now, and it's actually a small reduction in the assessment even with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, that's something that we need to look at going forward, and we'll see how it unfolds. It's, you know, we didn't used to think about our trash as much because a lot of people, the trash never left their land. But that's, as we know, not a good practice anymore.
Right.
So we're having to change the culture around that.
For about 2 months in Westminster, that's all we talked about this summer was
Yeah.
trash.
Now, are you doing pay as you throw?
We are, and it's curbside pickup for
It
both
is.
trash and recycling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
seems to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the costs involved over time are looking
Yeah.
pretty significant.
Yeah.
But I think is the concern, obviously.
Yeah.
The one other thing I want to ask about is you mentioned dog bite law. Anything at the state level that can help us with lack of animal control locally, but regionally, et cetera? Because it's, you know, implementation of a law like you're talking about, I think is valuable, but it doesn't help us
Sure.
in our immediate problems, and this is a big problem for us. And
Westminster as well, I think.
Exactly, for all the
Yeah.
towns around.
Yeah, so I think a regional solution is probably the way to go.
I would agree.
I think it's tough to get somebody to do it on a part-time, almost volunteer basis, because it's a tough job,
Yeah,
you know, with sometimes, but that's my sense, and I don't know if that's something the state needs to do well and see how widespread that problem is. Yeah, but I can bring that concern up and.
well, it just seems to me like the Wyndham County Sheriffs we've talked about it with Keith and, you know, beyond, but there doesn't seem to be a particular appetite for taking it on, and I don't know whether that's a state issue or not, but I think it's hard for us to take on as a town,
Yeah.
and you know, how we should be approaching that on a larger scale.
And
I
we
don't
can
know.
also, the League of Cities and Towns might have some information
Yeah.
about what's going on statewide, but it's certainly a concern I can bring forward and just see what other people are doing around that.
Yeah.
I do know that one of the things that came up during our animal cruelty case at Santa's Land was there was a little bit of a disagreement between the town and the sheriff's department about who was gonna pay for the care of the animals. And that's part of the law, you know, it's not really clear in the
Yep.
statutes who is responsible for,
Well, on some level, the owner
yeah,
is supposed to be responsible, but they've really
Yeah.
dropped the ball so that they can't be depended on. So
Yeah.
you're
And
right,
of course,
it needs to be-
that's true in many of these larger scale
Yeah.
Yeah.
animal situations, is that the owners, part of the reason they're in the situation they are is because of financial difficulties that brought them there.
yeah. So that was one, I know that's one that Keith, Clark has talked at the state level about, is that that vagueness in the law
Yeah.
about, but thankfully, we ended up with some really great people that offered to take animals, and they
Yeah.
took on the expense themselves, and, you know, we did some local volunteerism stuff to take care of the deer, so it really didn't cost. We had some people donate hay, and, but it started to be a real
Oh, yeah.
argument between him and I about who was gonna pay,
Yeah.
and where was the
Just-
money gonna come from.
I mean, that would be,
Yeah.
if you're looking at dog issues, and.
Just any of the laws
Then-
around.
Then being, you know, thoughtful in how the whole thing is approached on a larger scale.
No, I'll bring that concern up and see what we can.
And we're still looking for an animal
Thank
control
you.
officer, so if you'd like to sign up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we
What's your
need
name,
somebody
huh?
year round, right, so you have to.
And so is Westminster, right? Or did they find somebody?
I don't know if they found
Yeah.
somebody.
And, you know, it's one of those things where sometimes they have somebody, but they're not always available, and,
Well, the other thing we see certainly is that we tend to get somebody who comes and does it for 6 months or a year and then
yeah.
either moves on or burns out, or, you know, there's any number of reasons they don't.
The difficult part for us is it's usually not a dog issue. It ends up being some type of
Yeah,
issue where someone's, they're threatening.
yeah.
You know, people don't like it when you tell them that they're, so it then to me becomes a police issue.
Yeah, well, that's
So-
why I think the sheriff's department should be more involved.
But we can't seem to get there, so.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, and we'll stay in touch. Anything comes up, 387-8787. Operators are standing by. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, fine.
So SeVEDS update.
Stay, if you want.
We'll have some dinner.
Oh, okay.
Somebody may,
Do you guys wanna come,
Let's,
are you okay back there? You
Yeah,
wanna
we're
come?
fine.
let's,
Yeah, well, no, I was talking to Laura behind you, they're
Oh.
next, I think.
They're next. You can do whatever.
Huh?
They're next?
Yeah.
Okay.
good night.
So if
Thank
they
you.
want us to trade places with you, you can do whatever. Here.
We can do that.
I'll come stand up there, you stay there, fine. Is that okay if I stand? Yes, okay.
We have no, we're not full of rules in this room.
I like that. Good evening, everybody. This is Kristen Mahalik. She's our newest staff person at BDCC. She is actually our SeVEDS project manager. She'll be taking over for Jody Clark, who some of you may know. After the first of the year, Jody will be working with us on some of our projects that we have right now with state and federal funding going forward. So my name is Laura Sibilia. I recognize all of you, I think. And we are here doing our annual kind of road show to towns, talking to you about the program that you have been funding, which is our workforce development program, and taking some feedback and input and questions and concerns from you. I also have with me tonight from BDCC, RT, who's just stepped out quickly to speak with Representative Mrowicki. RT Brown is managing the Wyndham County Economic Development Program. And he's not managing the program, he's managing the regional aspect of that program. Those are the VY funds for economic development in the region. So he's working with businesses and others that are looking to access those funds, providing coaching, mentoring. So he's here also to give you a brief bit about how to access those in his program. Cynthia, how much time do you have?
Well,
You tell me.
It's 15 minutes now.
That's fine,
Because
that's
I know
fine.
we've got these guys
Yep,
here. too,
so you pull the cord if we get going too
It's
fast. I think
5:58.
RT's looking for about 5 minutes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So we have in front of you here, this is our kind of current state of affairs with our workforce development program at SeVEDS. Just to refresh, municipalities in the region have been investing in a person at BDCC who is working on increasing the size and quality of the workforce. I'll go through this pretty quickly with you, but right now our strategies are around, as Mike said, as I just said, increasing the size of the workforce. We actually don't have enough workers here for the jobs that will be coming available for employers that want to grow within the next 5 years. I may have spoken to you last year about the 5-year hiring inventory that we had done. That was spearheaded by one of our manufacturers up in Sonex, had modeled that and then allowed us to use it, looking out 5 years, who's going to retire, who's going to, what's our normal kind of churn rate in terms of people leaving, and then if we want to grow, what are we going to need? And that was about 3,000 people in the next 5 years. That was a year ago. Based on that, looking at our population trends and our demographic trends, we said, okay, this has to become our #1 priority. Because if our existing employers don't have the workforce that they need, it's going to be even equally challenging for us to bring in any new employers as well. So unfortunately, that's not something that you can change overnight. We have been thinking about, as Mike noted to you, immigration in a much longer term situation. You're not going to see them here because we just haven't been able to get time going on that. But any kind of strategy where we're looking to grow the workforce is probably long term going to be needing to look at some successful immigration strategies. We are focusing on really 2 strategies. One is retaining and cultivating our existing workforce. And where we're focusing there are in our schools. We're working with 6 through 12. We've done some inventorying of all of the schools that have 6 through 12. We're working particularly with BUHS, Bellows Falls, Twin Valley, and Leland and Gray in terms of what are your career awareness programs? Do your kids here know that these 3,000 jobs even exist? They may not want to work any of them, but if they don't even know they exist, we've got 0 chance of filling those jobs with kids. So Alex Beck, who is not with us here tonight, really a dynamo, younger SIT graduate, has grabbed that program and is working with all of our guidance counselors and is hoping to roll out a pair of programs later this spring, both around career awareness, how does our economy grow, what are the types of jobs here, and also how do I achieve the training or get the job that I might want here in the region. And so we're pretty excited about that. He also is spearheading our young professionals group, and we have brought you, they have a steering committee that has just recently been assembled. I think they're looking for 1 or 2 additional steering committee members. This right here is a number of upcoming events that they're working on. We think that this is really important for the workforce because it really provides folks in this younger demographic, which we've seen declining, a network, a social network, a place where they can have some social supports and social life, which is important. We also have here the next event, which those are our two props for this evening for you. In addition, and the program I think that is most tied to Putney right now is our internship program. This is through the 6 colleges. Are you folks familiar with the internship program? So we have actually seen a tremendous amount of success in that program and growth. And I have to say that Landmark College has really been leading the way. Dr. Peter Eden and now Jan Copeland, who used to work for us but now is working there, have been setting the pace, setting the bar. We have placed approximately 50 interns since the program's inception. Half of those have been from students in the 6 colleges. Half of those have been from students outside of the 6 colleges, but all with internships, paid internships in the Wyndham region. So we're pretty excited about that. We are also seeing an unintended consequence, about 20% hiring of the interns, full-time jobs. In fact, we've had some that are finding, some employers who have found the program to be so successful, they want to hire right away. And we're saying, no, you know what, let's continue to do this coaching and mentoring and working with folks, make sure we have a successful entry into the workforce. So we're really excited about it. We're really excited about it. In terms of recruiting, we are still working to implement the Southern Vermont Marketing Project. I don't know if you folks recall that project. It's a Wyndham and Bennington project looking to connect employers and tourism entities in a regional Southern Vermont marketing effort to talk about jobs that are available, the quality of life here, the schools here, etc. That's something that has been taken up by the Southern Vermont Zone effort, and hopefully we'll be able to attract some funding to that later this year. In addition, through the 6 colleges, again, we are using that to recruit people here, having some success. We're getting some traction and moving forward with those. We also, again, see the young professionals group as able to help recruit young professionals, bring people here because there's a network that they can plug into. In some of our rural towns, it's really hard to find folks, some peers to do things with. So those are really our big programs that we're running right now. We are also looking at really working with all of our service providers. There's also training that goes on here, which we are not undertaking. We have a number of nonprofits, service providers, human service agencies that are providing training and different supports for underemployed or folks that are challenged to be in the workplace. We'll be working to really inventory those, see if we have any gaps in terms of training availabilities. We also are hoping next year to be with our public schools program to be doing more tours of workplaces. We recently did one up at Sonics, which was fantastic. We brought a bunch of educators through there. Career weeks, regional career awareness programming, potentially a high school internship program, and I think I'll kind of leave it there in terms of what's on the horizon for us. We're still sort of building this. We are looking though to, in terms of our people that are here, from a pre-K to all the way to retirees, how can we best engage folks into our workforce system, if they choose to go? You know, how can we expand this size? So that's really our biggest effort that's going on. That is really the effort that is most tied to the support that the municipalities have been providing. We also have 2 federally and state funded programs that we are pretty excited about that we're kicking off. Green Building and Services Cluster Analysis. I might have talked to you about this last year because we had just gotten the state funding, we got the federal funding, and now we've hired the folks and we're kicked off, as well as the Southern Vermont Business Accelerator. So both of those are launching in process and we're pretty excited about them. In addition, we're looking at the Cheshire, Franklin, Bennington, Wyndham kind of work shed with the development organizations in all of those counties and looking at what opportunities there might be to collaborate with the SeVEDS that are existing there. That was something our federal partners really wanted us to do. It was special language that Senator Leahy had inserted into the Federal Register for looking at communities that are losing a nuclear power plant and paying some special consideration to their workforce needs. So that's another effort that is sort of ongoing. You have in front of you this map. Young Professionals Events, our work plan for this year. We are asking municipalities, again, to fund us at the level of $3 per person. We are aware that last year was a challenging year in terms of making sure that all of the town meetings were staffed. Kristen has assured me that she is going to make sure we have staff at all of the towns that we have this on. Unfortunately, that was a little hiccup with me serving in the legislature and not being here and our new staffing. So we are asking Putney to again include that as a separate item on your warning We're happy to talk about it. We're proud to talk about it. SeVEDS activities, and I think that's that. I'll take some questions, and then when you're ready, we can do our team.
Yeah, I guess the only question, and I know you touched a little bit on this, but I was trying to look at this at the same time. Are some of the local colleges, though, through looking at some of this 5-year forecasting and everything, altering a lot of the coursework to be? An example is several years ago, I know someone was looking for solar installation.
Right.
After Vermont Yankee was going down, they said, hey, solar might really pick up, but the only place available was down in Greenfield at the time. I don't know if that's changed now, but I'm just curious, as you look at the type of work that's needed.
That is certainly a place that we're going towards with the green building and services, kind of green economy, cluster analysis. We think we have a lot of knowledge assets here. We think we have a knowledge product here, but that will require educational tie-in. Folks from the colleges are sitting on those committees. Also with our healthcare team, looking with all of our healthcare providers, our major healthcare providers, and they have working with Union and CCB, and might have been looking at them, they're looking at me like, nope, don't look at here. Have put together a project around focusing on developing their workforce needs. They're pretty big in terms of higher paying jobs in the region. Healthcare is a major area, so yes, we are working with them. Unfortunately it's slow work, but we are getting traction, and I hope that you folks feel like you're seeing some progress. So, any other questions? Good. Archie?
What do I have, about 30 seconds?
No!
Or just give me more. I'm gonna give you So Laura's asking for money, and I'm here to try to give some away. So my name is R.T. Brown. I'm with the, do I have to stand? Can I sit? I'm with the Wyndham County Economic Development Program. I'm the project manager for that program, or otherwise known.
Feel free to
say. Okay. Otherwise known as the funds that were made available through the Vermont Yankee funds. So I joined the BDCC in late August and got really ramped up in probably middle of September. So I've been trying to introduce myself and tell folks as much about the program as I can. This document gives you an overview of the structure of the program as well as my contact information. I'm just to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm very passionate about economic development. I'm finishing up a master's, so I'm in economic development specifically, and a lot of things that Laura talked about really encompass what I would consider a holistic approach to economic development, anywhere from business retention, expansion, and attraction to workforce development. And to me, this program, the Wyndham County Economic Development Program, really gets at the core of what economic development is all about. People throw that term around all the time. The Vermont Digger, BT Digger, just did a forum with the candidates on specifically economic development, and it was interesting for me to listen to it because it made me realize that I feel like a lot of people don't actually know what it is at its core, and to me, if you distill it down to its very basic, it's all about increasing the quality of life for a community or an area. So with that, this program being focused on job creation, entrepreneurship, expansion, and providing funds to our local businesses as well as any businesses that we might be able to attract is right at the core of that. So I'm here to just introduce myself, tell you about that program, ask if you have any businesses in your community that you know are potentially expanding, or even as far as that somebody's thinking about a potential business that they've always had on their back shelf, but they just don't exactly know how to get started. I'd be more than happy to talk to them. We have a good network working with the Vermont SBPC to provide folks with technical assistance to get those business plans off the shelf, dust it off, and really start working with them to move on to some, to bring something to life, essentially. So that's all I wanted to cover this evening. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to take those or follow up with any information that you might need.
Sounds good. I know a couple of people I will make aware of
Okay,
this.
that's wonderful. Thank you. And again, I'm more than happy to meet with people or, facilitate discussions, have an open meeting. If you think that would be a good idea, come up here and maybe host an event or something like that, just to give folks a broader overview to the community. I'd be more than happy to do that.
What is the time frame of these, like the grants and the loan?
Oh, great question. So we just finished up essentially the second round, and those are in process. They are moving on to what's called the application stage, where they'll for the loan specifically, they will complete the VITA loan application, and then those go through, are reviewed by the ACC, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and I think it's targeted for middle of March for those to be finalized. But here's the important note. Starting in about mid-December, the loan program will become revolving. So you could submit at any time, the council will review it, and then it'll just get pushed through on a case-by-case basis. So there won't be, at least for the loan program, like a once-a-year application period. The grants, the council, we still have to decide what the schedule is going to be for 2016, so we'll make an announcement and distribute that to folks once that's been done.
What kinds of numbers are we talking? Are there caps on grant amounts and or loan amounts?
They essentially follow, the loans essentially follow VITA loan programs. It's just that if the project qualifies for the Windham County Economic Development Program, it enjoys that 2% interest rate.
Yeah.
So it could qualify for a general business loan, or maybe even the entrepreneur loan fund that goes up to 90% of the project. At the grants, Laura, the cap for the grant.
I think it's annually determined.
Yeah, I think that's correct. So yeah. But the loans can go up to about 350, I believe.
So
For real estate, for working capital, for equipment purchases, and then amortizations change depending on the loan program.
Good. Thank you.
Sure. Great meeting you folks. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Turn that off before it starts ringing in the middle of something. Earlier.
We have to wait for Josh to get
Yeah,
back
yeah,
anyways.
that's fine.
Do you have anything, do you want to hand stuff out, Nancy?
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a paper for that.
Here. We'll give all this to Scott.
There you go.
He's got to go through that.
Did you see that is for you? That packet of stuff, that's for the meeting Monday night.
Oh, great. Oh, okay, thank you. No, I didn't understand. I thought that was Josh's. I mean, Scott's.
No.
No, thanks very much.
Yeah, sounds like everybody's coming.
Oh, good.
Is there a bunch, is that a bunch of them right here?
Oh, yeah, that's what I was Here.
part out.
All right, next up, the tax exempt committee update. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe just kind of explaining again what this was put up, why this was created.
Okay, at the last town meeting, we voted on a couple of tax exemption requests, and people were asking how many tax exempt properties do we have, what's the history of the exemptions that are voted on, and we didn't really know. Nobody seemed to know. So from the audience, I suggested, I made a motion to create a tax exempt committee that would look into exactly those questions. And people approved that motion, and so I said I would volunteer to be on it. And then Cynthia, the board sent out a request for people who wanted to be on it, and then the board appointed people to be on it, and then also established a charge as to what the kinds of things the tax exempt committee should look into. So what the purpose was and what the questions were, and so that's what we did. There's been some evolution of that, because in compiling the information that's here, we met, oh, that's in my agenda. We met, I think we met 7 times. Is that what it says on there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we met 7 times, and the first several meetings were about just understanding the process by which properties are assessed to begin with, and then what the exemptions are, what the statutes are around exemptions. There was just a whole lot of information that came at us. And then we started saying, all right, how do we want to put this information together? What would be helpful? And so that's the spreadsheet. That we met with the listers and went through all the tax exempt parcels in Putney, and that's the left-hand side, the first category. And so there are different kinds of exemptions, we found out. The first one listed there is the contract exemptions, which are the voted ones. And those have a beginning time and an ending time. And those have to come before town meeting, because the voters have to decide on that. And then the private schools, then we went into non-taxable properties. And so there are private schools, the public school, the town cemeteries, houses of worship, town properties, state properties, United States government properties. And then there are current use properties, and then veterans exemptions, which the state said that an exemption for, I believe it's a disabled veteran, has to be at least $10,000 off the value of the homestead, but that the towns could increase that up to $40,000 if they so chose, and the voters did choose to do that. So in Putney, those disabled veteran exemptions are $40,000 off the homestead value. So the ones that are really influenced, I mean, the ones that the voters vote on are the contract exemptions. And that includes the solar, because we just did that at the last town meeting, I think. So then we looked at just the listers helped us with the different categories. So you've got the category of exemption, the parcel ID, the statutory exemption number for the contract exemptions. The acreage involved, the land value, the building value, and the, what's called the real value, which is the total value of acreage and land. And then for the contract exemptions, the contract value, the beginning date, and the ending date. And there was one special exemption that was on the second page, the Putney First Qualified Housing.
Which is what?
Is it the Putney Cares? I can't remember.
I can't remember either at this
Look
point.
at that first.
Sorry.
Putney Meadows. Yeah, Putney Meadows.
What is it?
Putney Meadows.
Putney, oh, okay, Putney Meadows.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Oh, man.
And that isn't, that I don't believe is that they get an exemption on the entire thing. It's just a different way of valuing the property.
Yeah, I forget why it's
They
called
don't
a
get it.
special exemption.
There's a different way to value that property, I think. So it's not a complete exemption. I think the
Right,
exempt
no, I
amount
know.
is this much.
Yeah, because the value is
It's
much
pretty
greater.
significant.
Yes, yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of information to take in. It was amazing.
No kidding.
We're still
Yeah.
not really.
And there's more.
And there's more, right? There's more.
Yeah, yeah.
Because one of our charges was to look at the history of the contract exemptions, and we realized that it was more important to get this information compiled in one document. So we haven't looked at the history of the contract exemptions yet. So-
Just out of curiosity, I'm sure this is just some computer glitch, but for the contracted ones for basket fill through Southern Vermont Cable, the end date is 1999. That's probably just some kind of
I think they just have to plunk a date. There isn't really an end date on those. so
oh, they're
they-
open-ended at this
they-
point
they-
until?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'm surprised it's letting them use a date that's older
Then the beginning.
than the
Yeah, that
beginning
makes
date,
sense.
but
Yeah.
I know they put some arbitrary
Okay.
year in there just to get it in there.
Gotcha. Cool.
And Comcast in Southern Vermont, well, I guess we don't need to get into the weeds right now. But, and I'm just interested, you might have said this, Nancy, but I missed it if you did. The federal property presumably is the land that 91 is on? Is that the bulk of it?
Oh, I don't think
I
so.
think some of it is like the Conti,
Soviet County Reserve,
Yeah.
right.
Is that is federal? That's
Off
federal?
Mountain Road.
Yeah.
Is it?
And-
Oh, okay. Huh.
And Hollandville,
Thank you.
certain.
But what mainly this is a draft, and we wanted to bring it to you at this point because we're looking for guidance into how you think this should be presented. Like, what other information would people need at town meeting? Should it be in the town report? That kind of thing.
so let's update everybody on where we're at for this next town meeting. So I guess it looks like to me for March town meeting, there are no contracts that are ending
No,
for
there
us to
aren't.
vote on. And I also have not gotten any information from Landmark College regarding having those properties on the warning for
Again.
this year again.
And my understanding is, and I may be completely wrong about this, but that they have also purchased at least one additional property.
They have. I've asked if they were going to have anything on the warning and I haven't gotten a response. So my assumption is if they're not yet, then, so the actual discussion of a voted exemption, like during a discussion of one of the articles, it probably won't
Come up in reference to a
So-
specific, unless they request.
Yeah, so, I mean, we certainly could put something in the town report. We have very limited space. So I guess that's what you guys are looking for is
Yeah,
direction.
it's
I mean, what,
Direction.
I guess the
basically,
question
just-
I would have for the committee is what Was there any like just revelation or just, was there like anything that, because you know that what the questions were at town meeting, do you feel like we can answer those better now that we're, because somewhat when you start digging through the stuff, the more you dig, the more questions there are, and I think that, you know, I think you guys have learned quickly that there's so much information.
Yeah,
but,
there's a lot of information.
you've certainly gone through a lot, but it's like, what out of this information would be really helpful to, I don't know, that's a question I can't answer, I guess I'm asking that question.
Yeah, what would be helpful for people to know? I think that if the committee continues, I think looking into the background, the history of the contract exemptions would be useful. Because how have the voters decided in the past and on what basis? And Carl and I started that, but we didn't.
Right, but then the spreadsheet went out and,
Yeah.
well, she did the spreadsheet, let's be honest.
Well, Kathleen and I put it
Kathleen.
together.
I don't know whether this is sort of within your purview or not, but one thing that might be helpful is sort of a review of particularly statutory, but any other sort of higher level guidance on how this is being done around the state might be helpful. And I don't know whether there's much to be found or whether that's going to end up being, you know, whether if we wanted that information, we would have to go sort of specifically to towns. But I just don't know whether they offer us.
Specifically, are you looking at a particular category, like the contract exemptions or the solar exemptions, or? 'Cause, you know, non-taxable parcels are really.
Are non-taxable parcels.
Non-taxable parcels.
Right. No, I guess it would be more the nonprofits that are, well,
I think it would be the voted
educational
exemptions.
institutions and voted exemptions that are big ticket. I mean, the ones we vote on that are the, I forget how they're all named, but the contract exemptions are pretty straightforward, I think, as far as the value of doing those, and those, because they're voted again over time, get revisited often enough. But I think that probably the most contentious of these issues are the schools specifically. So I guess I would be asking about that in how, whether there is any state guidance in how to manage that, and if not, whether, you know, how we might find out best practice or you know, sort of common practice, whether it's best practice or not, I don't know. And I don't want to, you know, lump a bunch of stuff on you if it doesn't make sense, but I think that's the stuff that's going to be valuable in trying to explain to people what the value of this I mean, I think this is great as far as sort of having this all documented. It makes it very clear what's what. A lot of this, I think, sort of isn't going to raise any questions from people. The schools are, especially when they see those significant values placed on the real estate holdings of the schools. That's going to be a big issue.
Well, in the little packet, there's a demo thing.
Yeah.
That one of the questions in our charge was
Value they bring.
the value they bring.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
The John McLaren from Landmark
Yeah.
sent some very helpful information. We don't have the same kind of information yet from Putney School,
Yeah, and I don't know if they have,
and I don't know if they have anything like
yeah,
that.
I don't know.
They could compile that information.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of what John sent is
Well-
they do the whole landmark cards tracts.
they-
Yeah, no, I don't think
Yeah.
they could compile that kind of information on who spends what
Right.
where, you know, certainly the
About
number, maybe
employees
this is
and
already
stuff.
in here as the number of employees and where they live.
Not
you know.
for
No, we don't
Yeah.
have that, we just have a list of the
That,
houses.
that would be available from them. I'm guessing they don't have any specific way of quantifying monies that are brought to town as a result of them. I don't, you know, I think the only, you know, that the landmark card would be the only way I think you could look at that quantitatively, would be my guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Putney's unusual because it has so many schools for a
Right,
town of 20, you know. so
Absolutely,
100. I mean,
yeah.
that's a lot. And that's, someone had asked me also, kind of along the same line with the schools, is that it seemed kind of ironic, or if that's the correct term, that we'd be exempting a school from paying the portion of the taxes that pay for our schools. You know what I mean? You know, so you have a public school that's losing money because of a school is getting exempted from taxes. And, you know, so the question was, can you exempt them from some of the taxes, but maybe not all of them? You know, keep the school tax in there, because that just puts more of a burden on the people then.
Yeah, I think what would be helpful, I know would be helpful to me, is really understanding the statutes that guide the difference between a college and K through 12.
Elementary or
yeah.
secondary.
Because
yeah.
they're very different statutes and we're very limited to some extent on what we can do with the K through 12 private schools. That's a different statute. The colleges are governed by, I can't remember the number of the statute, but by one that reads differently. And what can we and can we not say is exempt? Because I think there's some stuff that we don't have a choice. It's governed by statute. So no matter what the value is and what we don't have that choice, but I don't understand it enough to really speak about it in front of the town at town meeting. Because I think when we stand there and we're talking about Landmark College, I mean, if we were to get next year a Landmark College building on the warning and a Putney School building, for whatever reason it had to be on the warning, first of all, I'd have to understand that it really needs to be on the warning, but if they were on there together, people would be thinking schools. They wouldn't be thinking two different types of education. So I think that would be really helpful to understand that, the difference between those statutes.
For that, we need legal
And that's, I think that that's okay.
advice.
I think that, you know, maybe that's one of those meetings that we set up that's specific just for that, and I'll have our town attorney come.
Okay.
Or is
and or-
VLCT?
I was going to say,
resource
the League of
group?
Cities and Towns, I would be surprised if they couldn't.
Because the less research our sources need to do, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the quicker we can get it done.
Yeah.
We have two different bits of information though, right? The state-
The difficult part
interpretation is
about
different.
that is that when I start talking to attorneys in two different locations,
It's interpretation.
it's interpretation, and our attorney is the one that's going to either approve or tell me that something can or cannot be on the warning.
Well, I think the flip side of that is that VLCT might have a sense of, again, for example, best practice. That, you know, I mean, I think you're right. Our attorney could say, this is how you should handle it in your town, or this is how you are handling it in your town, or whatever it might be. VLCT might be able to say, this is the bigger picture of how towns in Vermont are handling this.
Yeah, they may direct you to property valuation and review, because
Yeah.
they're the ones that work with the listers on exempt properties, but I mean, certainly call the league, they are a wealth of knowledge. But,
And if they can help us decide what questions to ask.
Yes, and
ask the town
that would be
attorney,
perfect.
then we're ahead.
yep.
Yeah, because we can't be alone in this discussion, I wouldn't imagine. I mean, this has got to be around.
Yeah, I mean,
town,
the
so-
other, like, I mean, I bet it's but it's not a lot of towns, because not a lot have.
No, but I mean,
But
you know,
certainly you can call a town like Middlebury
Middlebury,
College has
yeah,
gone through this. you know.
absolutely, or, you know, I mean, even,
Yeah.
you know, Burlington, any,
Yeah.
you know, any of the, and, you know, it's hard to compare us to these, obviously, scale-wise, but Marlboro.
Yeah.
You know, there's gotta be
Randolph,
several
you know,
towns
all of
that
those. Randolph would
may
be a
not-
good one because that's a smaller community with a college comparable to,
And Steve is right, you know, we're unusual that we have the volume of educational institutions, but this question has to be coming up
Yeah.
on different levels in different places, so.
but I do know that we kind of sit there, you know, I mean, I know I do when the question comes, and I'm like, well, I know the statute says, you know, you just,
Right, and we did that. I mean, we
Yeah.
looked at the statutes
Yeah.
and tried to make sure we understood them, but without legal advice,
Yeah,
we
I
can't be
totally-
sure that we're,
Interpreting them correctly.
right.
Yeah, no, and then of course it comes to precedent too, which is, that's the other thing that I've found that VLCT can be quite helpful with, is precedent questions, because they can research that information pretty easily. Or, I don't know about easily, but it's easy for me when they research it.
More easily than we can.
Exactly.
I mean, the other part of this, which is probably even a, well, if not a bigger job, the same, is this research on the, how the town resources, fire, rescue.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. We haven't done
Which
that.
we've tried, I do have some data on that, so when you're ready to do that, but to get another set of eyes on it and really kind of understand what the hours are that are spent versus, because one of the things I found is there may be you can look at call volume, but you really have to kind of look at
Nature
one
of calls, et
nature of
cetera.
call, because
Yeah,
one call
absolutely.
might be a
Yeah.
6-day process of follow-up and all of that,
Right.
so.
You know, the other thing that would come into play on that, and, you know, how it, I think both Putney School and Landmark College, Tom spends a significant amount of time there doing permitting, et cetera, and whether the town is being compensated for much or any of that in any way, because I know, you know, for the most part, Tom charges for permitting process.
Yeah, for them,
And-
he usually does, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
so that would be, because that's actually income to the town from those institutions.
What kind of permit?
Construction primarily.
Oh, I see, okay.
But then also, you know, I don't know, for example, I know that he does sort of advising on fire safety issues. And, you know, there may not be permits involved in that, and that may be just part of the service he provides, I don't know. But, you know, if one of these places is, you know, changing use or something like that, it may not require a building permit, but it may require his expertise in order to decide whether, you know.
We bill them for special details too, like if they have a soccer tournament or something and there has to be EMS on site. That's the other thing I can think we bill them for. So we bill them for the hours that our guys are there.
Yeah, and I would think Tom would pretty easily be able to break that stuff down for you as to what, just the difference between emergency calls and billable time for whatever reason. And I don't know the nature of the Windham County Sheriff's Department's relationships with them as far as that's concerned. I don't know whether
Yeah.
they bill for any of the time,
I don't know that they bill for it, but they certainly,
spend time there.
they spend time there. The hard thing is they don't track it that way, so it's really difficult for them to extract the data of calls to there or to Putney or wherever.
But they can certainly tell us call volume. They might not be able to tell us call. They can tell us the number of times they go there.
No,
No?
no, that's they don't, yeah,
Interesting.
I know. Because that's been one of the things I've
That
asked them
seems
for.
surprising.
There must be a record somewhere.
You would think so.
I think you would have to read through them, but they don't have like a specific, when you extract data from any type of data file, you need to have it
Listed
listed
data.
as that. But if landmark is in the content of the description, it's a little more
Yeah.
difficult to extract that information.
So if you guys could just read through that stuff,
Read
that'd
through
be
and
great.
highlight
10 years of.
And highlight landmark every time, or Putney School, or green, whatever it is.
And then come up, you seem so good at coming up with the data sheet. Yeah.
This is our reward.
They may
Yeah.
be tracking it now, but 2 years ago, they were not tracking it that way,
Okay.
so they were having a hard time getting me that information. Maybe since I've asked, they,
Done it differently.
okay. So those would be the two things that I would be.
Was that only two? That seemed like a lot.
Well,
Too big.
two
Yeah.
big ones.
Too big, which can be, yeah, and I think that however you want to distill that, I guess one question would be at town meeting, if this were to become a discussion, either because we choose for it to become a discussion or at a separate meeting, is that information you want to present and or sort of defend is not the right word, but, be able to work with, or is that something you want us to be able to do? And that's just something you guys can think about.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about it right now, I mean, we're a committee paneled by the select board, so it's
Right.
really, we report to the select board,
Exactly.
and we would, be available to explain maybe, but it seems it ought to come from you, since you're the ones who have paneled the committee.
Yeah, no, and I guess, what typically happens in that kind of situation is we sort of give the information that we're available to, and then when there are questions that aren't clear.
We
to us,
can have, I certainly would have,
Pick
you
on
guys
them,
should do a report for the town report.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
that would be great.
can't, I don't.
When?
Oh.
January 8th.
Thank you.
January 8th, that's early. Is that earlier than usual, or are you
Staggering
just
that.
giving, oh, you are?
Yeah. And then we can have this information out, we can have the report out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
No,
and-
I think this would be great for people to be able to see. I mean, I don't know, the difficult thing would be how many copies do you make?
Yeah.
So on. I guess that would be the other thing that would be worth mentioning in a town report thing, is that this information can be available at town hall or wherever
Yeah.
we choose, because I'm sure people would be interested in this.
I think it would probably be, because the questions are not going to come up during the regular warning schedule, because there isn't one that's being, that's asking for a tax exemption,
But we
probably
don't,
under.
we still have quite a bit of time before, that can be any time up until.
I know, but because I've asked, I know there's one building at Putney School that's being purchased, and they've told me they are not asking.
They are not, no, I know that
And,
too.
the landmark, I've asked, and I just.
But
don't
you
know.
haven't gotten an answer yet. We don't, or you.
I've talked to them
you
several
haven't
times
said-
since, I just don't think that they're going to this year. I just,
Okay,
that's not to say, you're right, there's plenty of time left, but, if we don't have something on the warning, we can just bring this up under other business and let people know that the information's there, and, because I think it's important to talk about it,
yeah,
because it was such a hot topic.
last year,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, I'm not sure that we would be able to have the research done by then, because it's a lot of going back into the old town reports to try to track it. So,
As
But
far
so-
as which research, as far as
the
Time-
contract
timeframes and
exemptions.
nature of contracts, et cetera, yeah.
It's like, how did those come about, and what's been the history of, every time it comes before town meeting, what's been the discussion, what's been the thinking behind granting the exemption?
I feel
Or not.
like what you've done so far has given us a lot of information already.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that it's probably more about a sense that
It's moving forward.
That it's
and
being, that
getting-
people are educating themselves about it in order to understand. That's a lot of the
And then,
value in it, I think.
I would think that our next direction would be to find out the statutory stuff that you
Yes.
asked about. That
Absolutely.
seems to be the more
Yeah.
critical.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that can be explained, that when we're talking about schools or when exemptions are coming up and it's about schools, let's just be clear, everybody understands the difference between the two types and which statute. So if that would be, if we got that for town meeting,
Okay.
I
That
think
would be
that
good.
would be.
Yeah, especially since, you know, if it is statutory and there's some very clear information that comes as a result of that, then that sort of takes it off the table per se. I mean, you know, if Landmark for whatever reason is exempt from X, Y, and Z, you know, because it was previous to 19, whatever it
41 or
was,
what, yeah.
exactly, then we're not talking about that anymore, and that's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right, so that gives us the direction we were looking for on what we should do next.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Much appreciated.
It's been interesting.
I'm sure. It's a big project, so obviously, so.
Well done.
Thanks.
And thank you for getting agendas to us and minutes to us, and it is, yeah, it's been really, it's been good.
Well, thank you for your time.
Yes.
Can you read that? I'm sorry it printed so little, but.
Computer and server purchase. Yeah, I looked at this.
Okay, so the last column here that says tech group,
Things to do.
yeah, but I don't want you, the numbers are not, it was off.
It's not complete.
It's not complete.
So that's the one, and that's the one you emailed us, or however we had it electronically.
Well,
Yeah.
tech,
This is the same as what was
and I added
emailed to
tech
us.
group, yeah, tech group wasn't on the first one you got.
Right, no, I know.
Yeah, okay,
That's the
so,
Burlington one?
yes. So he came down and met with me, and, went through the office, kind of got a sense of what we were looking for. He went back and, put some numbers together. This is the final quote that he gave me, which I just got today.
Okay, so it's not the 15.
It's not, if you wanna change that number to 21,000. And $21. That includes labor. The labor was $5,400. Their labor cost is $135.
45, wasn't it? 35.
Yeah, I mean, that's one area that to me sort of left out as pretty significantly different with the Vermont Digital versus others is, you know,
Yeah.
95 bucks an hour is 2/3 of $140 an hour, you know,
Yeah,
that's a big difference.
yeah. So, and that, the one from Vermont Digital, that is their ongoing hourly rate for, because part of this is continued service.
Right, no, that's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking is,
So-
I mean, if we're looking at something where there are gonna be, you know, I mean, hopefully
Right.
they're not gonna be here all the time, but,
Right, so the other piece of this, Tech Group offers an IT, a continuing IT support, but it's a monthly cost of $345 a month. So that's another significant chunk of money that's an annual, whereas Vermont Digital doesn't do contracts anymore, they're an on-call basis at
yeah,
$95
it seems
an
to
hour.
make sense.
Competitive was the same thing, they would offer a contract, but they're $144 an hour.
Oh, the other thing I see that I didn't see last night when I was looking at it on computer is that these are all Dells as opposed to Lenovo's, which,
Yes, he did, he quoted a Dell,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, there, in looking at Tech Group's quote, you know, there's some differences, you know, an 8-core instead of 6-core, a little faster speed, 2.4, you know, there's 32 gigs of memory instead of, I don't remember, that was 16. They offered a 5-year warranty, instead of 3-year.
Who did?
Tech Group.
They did,
Yeah, Competitives is 3-year.
yeah. And Vermont Digital is 3-year also,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. The Laptops are there is a difference in the warranty for the laptop. One is a 1 year, the other one's 3 years. So the other 3 places offered 1 year, he offered 3 years. But I thought everybody was really great in what they were, I mean, obviously all the products are equal, except for Daniel's are refurbished, and I just,
Right. Can't go there.
I'm done with the refurbished.
Yeah.
Except for the server. The server that he quoted us was not refurbished. Everybody was very helpful. I mean, these guys have been over the top trying to get me information and understand that it's a quote process, and they're not, they're not worried about that. But Vermont Digital was just middle of the road. We have had,
As far as the expense is
as far as the
concerned, but that's
expenses
not.
and as far as what you need. I mean,
But not, just to be clear, not as far as your experience with them.
No,
You
no,
feel
no,
your
no, no.
experience with them has been very good.
my experience with them has been very good.
Yeah.
All of them I've had very good experience with.
Yeah,
Vermont Digital I've worked with in another line of business professionally. As far as them all dealing with me with this process, they've all been really helpful. And
yeah.
so I don't have any problems with any of them as far as that. I think they all would be great, if we could. But I think that Vermont Digital they understood that we weren't looking we don't need the top tier, and we don't want
Right.
they're just middle of the road.
Right.
They kind of got it when they were here, so.
So what I'm getting, particularly price, I mean, I have to say that at 21,000, to me, that takes it off the table. That's more than
That's quite a
we
bit more, yeah.
want or are able to spend. And I think our previous discussion indicated that Vermont Digital seemed to be where you were leaning.
Yeah.
I guess I would say that if that's still the case, that seems to be the obvious answer. I'm glad and grateful to everybody for the contributions they've made in putting this together. But I think Vermont Digital seems to be the right choice.
Yeah.
Is that you?
That's how I feel, yes. That would be my recommendation.
One other question I had was, it seems like this tech group put a pretty high emphasis on battery backup.
Yeah.
I wondered about that
What
too.
does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Carl knows.
I was going to say, Carl might be able to.
What, uninterruptible power supplies?
Yeah.
UPS, yeah. I don't know, I do more radios than computers, but they all have some sort of instant backup power available. I don't know if Town Hall has a generator.
No.
No,
Okay, so then you'd be completely dependent on that, and that's
Yeah.
probably a good idea.
yeah. So what Vermont Digital was saying, of course, the laptop has a battery backup
Right.
anyways.
Right.
Vermont Digital was more concerned with the battery backup for the server than individual workstations.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
I don't know enough to answer.
Okay,
Yeah.
neither do I.
But for battery backup, mostly you want enough time to close things down
Yeah.
and save files. You're not gonna run all day while the power's off in downtown Putney, but you do wanna be able to close
Right.
down in an orderly manner.
Right, most of what we do on a daily basis is run off of the server. So like if I'm working in the NIMRIC program, which is what most of us are kind of working on, or even Word documents or any of that stuff, we're working on the server.
Which means it's getting basically processed elsewhere from your
Right.
computer and.
Right, so if something was to happen, the work that we
They've got
did
it
is
covered,
there,
per
and
se.
if that
Yeah.
battery backup is there. The guy from Tech Group was concerned also with the server. He did say to me, if you're not in a location where you have power issues all the time, there are some places where they're
Where
constantly
blip,
running
yeah,
into
yeah.
it. He said he would be more concerned, but
Yeah.
I mean, in 3 years that I've been here, we've lost power,
A handful of times.
yeah, 4 or 5 times maybe.
No, and as long
Yeah.
as you're not gonna lose,
Yeah,
everything you've been working on for
right.
a long time by it going out, that's probably okay.
That's good.
My sense would be Scott would probably be comfortable with us going ahead and voting on this.
He told me, tell them to make a decision.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion that we engage a contract with Vermont Digital to provide us with the new computers.
Can we put in that motion where we're gonna get the money from?
Yes,
So-
that would be funded from, partly from,
I'm thinking we should use from Brian's budget?
yeah.
I'm thinking, my suggestion would be to use the money that we were going to transfer to the capital fund. There's a $15,000 line item.
In total, because you were thinking, that some of it might be town hall, and that's what I was pointing
Yeah.
to. I wasn't thinking specifically.
Brian's budget?
But we can, if he's got money to spare.
No, the reason that I changed, I had said that originally about using some of the money, like we had town hall money, that I'm still gonna get these floors sanded before the
Okay.
end of the fiscal year, so we need to save that 6,000 that we
Okay,
have
sounds good.
in there.
So yes, to be funded from the
Capital expense line.
capital expense line.
All right. And I will second that. And any further discussion, comments? All right.
I think you wanna say something. No, I was talking about. Come on, Carl.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, do you have some questions?
I just had a question. You were saying that it's 21,000 for the other source, but how much is it for Vermont Digital?
$12,995.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, we had already, just so you have the background, there were 3 providers here that we had already had this discussion at our previous meeting, and then we introduced one other possibility, and that's why we were talking about that one specifically.
I only have one question for Cynthia and Barbara. Would you be completely comfortable?
Laura.
Laura, sorry. Unplugging your computer, your workstation, and then plugging it back in and being sure that you had not lost anything?
Me right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have the laptop.
And Laura will
Oh, okay.
also have a laptop.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the ones that aren't laptops?
We will probably put back because we have battery
Okay, just-
backups
yeah.
right now.
Okay,
They're sitting all
sure,
over
no,
the
other than
office.
that,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I do have to say though that probably, yeah, I would. Because I don't do anything that I would lose really, that I don't save.
Again, because you're working with the server,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
But yes, you're right. I mean, the more protected we can be, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, no further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, like that.
Okay, so if we can just add on this liquor license to the next.
Who's it for?
It is for next stage.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that's are they actually gonna have liquor on
I think
site?
it's for,
or are they-
it's for maybe the opening or
That,
something.
okay, yeah, that's what so it's a one-time thing?
What is it, or?
Or do they have, or
I think they were talking about whether or not people could have
liquor
stuff in
on
there
site?
during certain occasions. Maybe.
I can have Anita come in and explain to you what this is. She handed it to me and said, I'll do that. Let's do that in a minute, so we have more information.
Sure.
Okay.
So yeah, we're up to the town manager report.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that we had received back in May of 2015, just a notice that there was a possible violation at the gravel pit because we're a co-permittee on the Act 250 permit. And it had to do with the blasting
Right.
notification requirements, I think I had told you
Yeah.
at the time. I had gotten a letter from Stevens and Associates saying that they had reviewed the process with Renault and they felt that they were in compliance. Well, it ended up that the,
MSHA didn't agree with them?
Natural Resources Board didn't agree with them. So they did issue a violation, and there's a description of the violations here. there was some fines that were associated with it. Renault has paid the fines, but we signed this document. It's called an assurance of discontinuation. It doesn't mean that the gravel pit is discontinued.
Means that we'll stop doing those practices.
Yes, and that they've come up with the practices that they
Will do.
that they need to do in order to be in compliance. So everybody's working together. There's no major issue at this point, and we didn't have to pay anything.
And you
for it,
don't
so.
need any action.
No, I had to get it to them, so I signed it, and I wanted to let you guys know that I signed it.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's one of those things.
Yeah.
And,
So that was that. The other thing that I have to sign is a grant agreement for the structures grant for Hickory Ridge Road, that project. So
I'll make a motion that we
Okay.
authorize Cynthia to sign the grant agreement for.
it's $175,000.
Okay, I'll second it. Further discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That. Okay. SeVEDS was here. This is something to do with. Laura, would you do me a favor and go ask anybody to come in and explain that? I don't know if it's a temporary one, or just ask her, is it temporary, is it something that they're getting? So I did not do a current budget status report because I've been working on the budget, upcoming budget.
We're roughly where we ought to be.
Let's read through those. So, this is the highway budget. This is just a draft, and then here,
This is not
that's
what you-
highway,
Yes, oh, state highway, yeah, okay.
and then this is general fund. And I think, actually, Brian, now we can,
Okay, sit down.
yeah,
Take my
Well,
place.
you could have sat down
we'll kind of,
previously.
It's driving me nuts.
Limping.
what's the draft?
Pain. Or just sitting.
Just sitting.
You sit all day.
Yeah.
You better not sit all day.
In a vehicle, most of the
Sure,
time.
man. Is it a piece of equipment or?
You do too.
I know, I do. Okay, so so I've been working on the budget. What'd she say?
She's with somebody,
Oh.
but what she said is that is for like a regular license
Okay.
that they can serve at any given time. They won't need to come in when they're having a special
Oh, okay.
event. And they won't have somebody cater their event, they will have somebody on staff basically that can serve.
So they will have liquor on site.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we approve liquor license for Next Stage. Is that?
Next Stage
how it's
Arts
named?
Project.
Next Stage Arts Project.
Okay, can I second that? No further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So here on this page. Approved.
And we're not specifically talking about the highway budget
We're not,
tonight,
but
we're just-
we're not, but no. So I gave you both the newest update of the highway budget and the general fund budget.
Yeah,
Brian and I have been working on the capital replacement plan.
uh-huh.
And that's a number I want to get put into the budget. So, but we wanted to talk to you because we're trying to think of a way to get out of this borrowing cycle that we're in all the time. This 5-year borrowing cycle for our pieces of equipment, or 10-year, depending on the cost. Right now, borrowing money is really cheap.
But it's not gonna continue.
But we don't know
Right.
if there's going to be a point where that isn't the case. So if you look at the highway budget, I think it's on the last page. Right now, for the highway alone, we're spending about $9,000 on interest, which isn't a ton, considering our,
We're second.
that's the last page. Considering that our principal payments are almost they're $144,000.
Yeah.
But the concern is that over time, 5-10 years from now, we're going to be in a situation where that could double or whatever. I don't
Although
know.
these are all fixed.
These are fixed right now, yes.
Right.
I'm just talking about future borrowing,
Right.
yeah. So, we are just wanting to know what your thoughts are on trying to do that. And
Build a capital fund.
either build a
or-
capital fund or, yeah. I mean, one of the things that we talked about is putting money into a capital fund every year, which Brian came up with the number of 120,000 to start building that and start paying for things as they come up. The problem is that there's going to be these overlap years.
And lump sum.
Yeah.
Right. Basically, it's that first 5 years while you phase in the new and phase out the
Yeah.
old.
So, with that being said, we're also talking about mixing up some and purchasing another, is it a dump truck? And not replacing the 1 ton this year, and I'll let him explain his reasoning.
Well, presumably there's a dump truck on the capital plan, isn't there?
The small dump truck, the 1-ton dump truck.
Okay, but you're talking about purchasing a large dump truck, or
Yeah.
not?
Well, more or less keeping the one we have, the small dump truck, and purchasing a,
New large dump
Yeah.
truck, right.
yeah.
So as far as the current capital plan is concerned, how does that fit
Okay,
into that
so-
picture?
Here's the current, and I only have highway on here, so just keep that in mind when you're looking at this. There's more that is outstanding for debt. So this is the current capital plan, and in the column where, here, Brian, you should probably look at it at the same time because I said something that's not right. The column that's highlighted is the budget year that we're working on.
Right.
So what we have on the plan as of today, and what I would budget for in any other year, and continuing what we've been doing, is we would be purchasing a new 1 ton. We would put money, for lack of better term, money down on it, which is 35,000, and then the rest of it would be spread over the next 5 years.
Yeah,
The second
okay, that
line
first,
down.
yeah.
Okay. Did you make a noise?
No,
Okay,
well, I did, but
okay. And then the rest of the dollars that are in this column are principal payments, principal and interest payments on things we've already purchased.
That 1 ton, how is that $135,000 vehicle?
Well, that's what we've had on our plan. Maybe, should it be one?
I think maybe that was kind of the noise I made. I think maybe that 135 was without your trade-in. Not taking the 1 ton trade-in off of that.
Without it or with it?
No, without it.
No, you should, that 135, you should take whatever the trade-in of the current 1 ton would come off of that 135.
Okay.
But is 135 an accurate number for that truck currently?
Pretty close,
Is
yeah.
it really?
Yeah.
That's astounding. Huh.
I mean, when you ask them, they always give you a
Right,
bigger number just so you're safe.
right.
But that, I mean, essentially that little truck there, all the equipment that goes on that is as much or even a little more than what you would put on a big truck.
Right.
Just because of the
So that's fully outfitted.
and the
Yeah.
truck itself is
Beefed
a
up.
little bit less expensive than a dump truck, but not a huge amount.
No.
So, okay.
So is that a 350 or is it?
No,
what is it, a
that's
550?
550.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking 1 ton and thinking, how are we?
Yeah, we call it the 1 ton.
Yeah,
It's really more.
it's bigger,
of a-
yeah. 2 ton for all practical purposes,
Yeah,
something like that, yeah.
Whatever, yeah, 3 ton, I don't know.
Okay. I'm just gonna keep these numbers how we've had them, that's how they've been in the plan, so
Yeah.
we'll just keep them like that.
What would be your, I mean, trade-in might be what, 25 for that? Maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the one, that's
somewhere
the
in that range,
one thing that I
probably.
could get it. I mean, the last one, we traded in, I think we could look back, I think we got maybe 10,000 for it. But that one didn't have a wing. It was 2 years older, so it wasn't in as good a shape. The body was essentially gone on it, yeah. But,
Well, we should find that out, obviously, going forward.
yeah, if you could put a number on it, I'd probably, 20,000, I'd put,
maybe,
yeah.
Well, that's what I just did was 20. And so, but that doesn't really change the going out 5 years. I mean, it's 16 versus 20 for the payments.
Right.
Okay. So then you go to the next column and we keep, the bolded numbers are always
Cash outlay.
the cash outlay for that year, and the other ones are the, okay. So then, this was just looking at trying to purchase things outright in the next 5, well, forever. Just strictly costs, not putting money aside somewhere. This isn't talking about where the revenue's coming. It's either gonna come from taxes, or it's gonna come from a capital plan, or this is just strictly spending money. So you can see what that does to our numbers. It just,
But then
all of a
after,
sudden-
right, it levels out
yeah, and then
and
in-
drops. Yeah, no, and
Yeah.
of course that question of, I mean, if we're paying $9,000 a year, presumably at roughly 2 to 3%
Yeah, at the,
currently.
yeah, I mean, we're,
You know, if you look
1.8
at-
was the lowest we've gotten recently, but yeah.
Right, so,
around there.
so if you look at that going to 7, 8, or, historically possible 11, that becomes a huge number.
Yeah, so really I'm not looking for a decision on if this is what we're gonna do tonight,
It's just something to think about.
It's
Yeah.
just more, it's really a philosophy more than anything. So
Right.
the question is,
Do we wanna
you
spend more
want, do
upfront?
you want me to try to work this with this philosophy of we're trying to reduce our debt? In preparation for maybe interest rates going up, or are we okay with it where it is now and let's continue for another couple of years and then revisit it? Because if the philosophy is, money's cheap right now, we're gonna stick with it until we can and keep the tax rate stable, then that's okay. It's just I don't wanna
But if
spend
we're
a
not
huge
building,
amount of time trying to, or, and start upping our capital reserve a little bit more than what we have been. We could do that too.
I guess my inclination would be to try and take some of the sting out of this and spread it over, more evenly over maybe 5 years. And I don't know how realistic that is, but,
On the cash.
on that big lump sum,
Right.
I mean, if we could,
Well, I mean, part of this sting of this first year, it could be that we use some of that capital money that we have already in the capital reserve fund
to take a chunk of
to
that
take
out
a
of
chunk
it.
of that
And
out
how
of
much is
there.
in that fund?
I think it's
Karen?
100,000 right now.
Yeah, and,
So
and,
there are
and or
ways to-
phase this in over, essentially phase it in. I mean, I think that interest rates are gonna be going up presumably relatively soon, but probably not jumping dramatically right away, hard to say.
When you say phase it in, how do we phase it? I'm not sure how that's what I'm asking
I
for
don't
help
know,
on.
you're the financial.
Well, I've thought about this and, well, one of the things was.
I mean, basically, if we said, okay, well, let's take this number and dole out 100 and borrow 50, and pay $10,000 a year
Yeah.
at this stage. And, well, I guess what it would be is, if we look at the reasonable short-term future to assume that borrowing is gonna be not crippling right
Right.
away, then we could, pay out 100 for this guy this year, 100 for that guy next year, and then we've also borrowed 125. Basically extend this pyramid of tapering it off, extend that out a couple of years longer, just to
Yeah.
reduce that overall initial bite that goes with it. I don't know.
No, I mean, I was thinking along the same lines. I guess one question is, are any of these interest rates variable, or is it all?
I haven't, since I've been here, I have not gotten a variable rate because I've
Okay.
always been, I'm not much of a risk taker, so.
Well, it's also it's just the fixed rates are so darn good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I realize that, but I guess
Yeah.
that would be another way of stretching it out, so to speak.
Take a variable rate.
If we knew that they were starting to, I don't know, that's, I
Yeah.
mean, that's not necessarily my strong point either, but I'm agreeing with you, I think, to stretch it out so that it's not a real heavy sting, so to speak,
Yeah,
right away. It might be easier for people to swallow.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I think if we roughly took, half to 2/3 of that number and made it as a lump sum and borrowed,
yeah,
if we're looking at next year, money's still gonna probably be pretty cheap.
Yeah.
It's probably worth borrowing, essentially drawing the current philosophy out in order to transfer it to a different philosophy, which I think is a good idea. But we need a bunch of money.
yeah, and then what can happen is in that year that you're not purchasing anything, that can be the year that you put in a lump sum into a capital plan in anticipation, so that
Going
then you
forward.
start to
Yeah.
stabilize a little bit. I mean, at first we had talked about putting 120,000 in every year to try to start building that up, but that's 120 on top of
100.
on top of a purchase, and then on top of a.
Right, of course.
Or we
yeah.
could put the 120 in there, and I don't know, I guess I should just do some scenarios.
Well, the other way to think of it, Cynthia, as far as what I'm saying is concerned, is to say, okay, we're gonna spend $210,000 a year, every year for the
Right,
next
so-
X number
so-
of years. Where are we in 6 years if we've done that, and again, to essentially narrow that funnel so that we're ultimately not borrowing, but as it is now, yeah, I guess if you just stop doing that right away, then 5 years from now you're done, aren't you? I just think that's a big number.
It is a big number.
That's
It is a big number that we could take.
it's doubling our recent past.
Yeah, it is a big number. It also could be funded though partly through and then maybe like what you're saying, maybe this one piece of equipment then you're just upping this the next year because you're adding a payment there.
Right,
I don't
but
know how
again,
to
if you look at trying to do a fixed or a relatively fixed amount over
Yeah.
a significant number of years, basically paying forward or paying out longer on some of these, then ultimately you spend the same,
Right.
I mean, if you took all of these numbers and averaged them,
Yeah.
and said we're gonna spend that amount on average, and then
then
backtrack and figure
backfill
out,
it to the
exactly,
limit.
figure out
Yeah.
how you're gonna do that.
I mean, I do have to say that even though we've borrowed money, we've had to spend money on interest, that line has stayed pretty stable.
Yeah,
So-
no, and that's what I'm saying, I'm thinking,
But so that's the question. That's where it comes to a philosophy. Does it matter if it's paid off or if you're?
well, it
Well, it's when
does.
interest rates go up.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
money's been cheap for a
I know.
long time.
Really long.
I mean, and history will tell us that's just not gonna continue to
Yeah.
be the case ultimately. I mean, it could be several more years, but
But then,
at some point, it's not gonna be.
yeah. Okay.
I guess my thought on it was it's a lot easier to try to figure something out now than when you really need to.
Yeah, yeah. No, and if you go, I mean, I don't know how far we'd have to go back in order to find when we were paying significantly
Yeah,
higher
we
interest
talked about
rates,
that
but
today.
I'm sure it's there somewhere.
Yeah.
And, you know, our overall debt load may have been lower at that point, so those numbers might not be
Yeah.
as good, but if you do it proportionally, that turns into a lot of money pretty quickly.
Okay, so, well, that, I mean, it could have been that you guys were like, nah, we're just gonna keep our own money. Now I know that that's not the case, and we'll just move forward and see
Yeah,
if there's
no, I think it's worth figuring out.
another way that it's. Yeah, so, I mean, there,
Yeah,
if you look at this, just to point it out, if you look at this plan here is with purchasing this dump truck.
Right.
We can, if we're not gonna do that, we go back to this, where it's 135,000 this year. So this actually, this second plan I gave you is actually pushing out that 1 ton to 2019, 2018.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
And-
which is what Brian's proposing.
Right.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yeah,
So this is a little different just because, and then the other thing we added here was
Right, but-
20,000.
but if you put that in at, well, so how are you?
What was, how did we get that to be 60,000,
Yeah, no
Brian? I
kidding.
can't remember.
That's
Well,
tricky.
because,
You were gonna replace it with something less.
yes,
Oh.
right, exactly.
So
Yeah.
you're thinking you just don't need that big a vehicle, or?
Well, the trouble with that 1 ton is right now is it's not enough truck for the job.
So they're pushing it,
What it's currently doing.
right,
Yeah.
you're pushing it.
Which is why if you look back, we've spent
I don't know.
5,000 to 8,000 on that thing every year in repairs because it's just,
Getting hammered,
yeah.
yeah.
And, but once we get past that, I think
Okay,
you know,
so,
really all you need is the 1 ton for the summertime work. You know, you need
right,
the truck to carry the compactor, the tools for
so
the job.
you'd be talking about an actual 1 ton.
Yeah,
is more what
possibly.
Then we
you'd be
could
looking
actually
at.
keep that description.
Yeah.
Right, there you go. So, and this new dump truck would be not the size of one of your full-size dump trucks, or would it be? I guess
Yeah,
it would be.
it would be, yeah.
Okay, so you're talking about, I thought you were talking about replacing one, so you're talking about adding
Adding.
an additional dump truck to the fleet
Yeah.
and then downsizing the pickup truck. Probably makes sense in the long run.
So that's what this plan, that doesn't mean that we can't back, you know, if we
Do the
don't
same thing.
do the same.
Right, right.
And then down at the bottom, I added this lawn equipment, including a small truck. That would be if we hire this next person and they
Right.
would do our mowing of the pool and all of that stuff.
And I'm not even sure on the truck on that. You know, we could try it for a year with what we have without putting another vehicle in
Right.
to essentially tow the lawnmowers
Yeah, the only
and,
thing.
and just see how it goes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I mean,
as
the-
long as
the-
it was, you know, the only reason I put the truck in there is because I was trying to put a scenario where it didn't change any of our operating. You know, we could still have that 1 ton for every single day to go to the job and work with without having to worry about losing it to mowing.
Right, which, as you were saying, when this is important is in the summertime, which
Yeah.
overlaps with mowing, so
Yeah.
that's problematic.
But I think maybe, you know,
Yeah, you don't want to have to be babysitting a mowing trailer though, really, but.
yeah, I mean, you know, it really, the mowing's probably 1 day a week. So, you know,
Might not be a big
if we had to put up with it for a
Yeah.
summer and it really didn't work out, you know, we could revisit it, but I
Figure it out, yeah.
don't know.
So that's the difference between these two, other than just the money part of it. It's just kind of rearranging and
Yeah,
adding something.
yeah.
Okay,
I think look at a slightly more phased approach and
Okay.
see whether you can make it
So
make a little
I
more
will
sense.
work on that. I don't think there's anything else in the highway. I am going to do 2 different budgets, one of them with, numbers in it of adding an employee. And
Right.
without, so that you guys can see that, I just haven't got those numbers yet. And then just quickly in the general fund budget, one of the questions I had, I don't have numbers on these pages, page 4. under legal fees, it's line 105. So I had a discussion with the, last year it went up to $750 a month. I called them and said to them, asked them if they could give me like a printout of how many hours I use. And they couldn't give that to, well, they didn't give that to me, but what they came back with was, we could do an hourly rate, and not have a retainer. And he said the average for municipalities for him is between 3 and 5 hours a month is what he usually gives people. That's where the 5,400 comes in that I have in there. But then they called back and they said they could do 600 a month for 5 hours. That would be a retainer, so we would pay that no matter what I used.
It's 120 an hour.
Yeah. So
Okay, so that would, so do that as a retainer. So essentially it's go hourly or
yeah.
bargain for a retainer a little bit.
Yeah, so my thought is that, I don't have a problem with trying the no retainer and the 3 hours. Because we do get charged for the bigger things anyways, the Trans-Canada
Right, of
stuff,
course, yeah.
and it may force me a little bit to use the league more for simple things that I might not pick up the phone for, you know,
Yeah.
they can answer quite a bit. And see how it goes this year. And kind of keep track of how many hours we actually are using versus, I mean, because it's $7,200 for the year.
And they can't tell you how many hours
Well,
we did use or not?
he just, I think I'm
Doesn't-
sure they
He
can.
doesn't really track it unless,
Yeah, unless
There's a
it's
specific
over,
item,
you know,
yeah.
I don't, there was something, they just didn't want to spend the time looking for it. So, and I think the first year I would have never said this because I called them all the time, but I don't call them as much as I used to.
Right.
Just because I'm more confident and comfortable with some of the things. But I think 3 hours a month is a good number for us to start with. So
That's
I
a
just
lot.
wanted to
That's
know
a
how you guys felt about that. If
Okay.
you're-
Yeah, out of curiosity, I mean, so where do they draw the line between what's outside of the ordinary? You know, like this Trans-Canada
Yeah.
thing. I mean, are there other scenarios that have happened in this past year where we've gone,
The only one that I can
Outside
think
that.
of is the fire station roof, and we ended up having to hire a different.
we hired an
company
outside
anyways.
lawyer anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, if we were in a lawsuit
right?
for something, that would be
Mhm.
beyond the,
Yeah, it's almost more about sort of day-to-day advice
Yeah.
versus an actual legal
yeah, like I have a
situation
zoning
arising.
question, you
Okay,
know, and I
okay.
call them.
Mhm.
But like I said, I call them for a lot of things that I think the league, but they're on retainer, so I call them.
Right,
Right.
no, and the league's pretty good about stuff
Yeah,
like that.
so,
Yeah, I think that
you know, I
makes sense.
figure that we're paying them, I might as well call them.
Yeah.
But if I need to be more careful about it, then, I'll be more careful about it.
Yeah,
So, okay, so I'll stick with the number I have. in
so
there.
you're gonna budget it for 450,
Yeah,
right?
How do they keep track of that?
it's 15-minute increments.
Okay,
And-
So one phone call
And
is 15
any
minutes.
portion thereof.
Yeah,
okay,
so if I'm, yeah,
okay.
So, if you're on the phone, ask plenty of questions.
you know, if I
Not
email,
in a hurry.
No,
I mean, if you get
watch
back
up to the
15
15 minutes.
Right.
yeah, 'cause if it's 16, it goes to the next, yeah.
Exactly.
There's a huge number in the printing and program for elections. It went up from 300 to 3,000. There's 2 elections. We have mandatory programming for,
Right.
we have to have the voting machine programmed.
Wow, yeah.
Still waiting for quotes from insurance.
2 elections, how was that?
There's a primary and,
Oh, okay, so the prime,
general,
yeah, that
yeah.
makes sense, I just wanted to put in the primary.
you guys know the Lister question I have. They gave me a budget of 28,000. I have what was in there last year, but,
No, they gave you a budget of 32. too.
Well, 28 for the salaries.
Right.
I didn't change on any of these reports. All of the salaries are exactly the same as they were last year. I haven't done anything.
Because going forward, that's what they should be for the moment until we
Until
look
you
at it.
decide,
Right.
yeah. I think that's the only things that I really wanted to, I mean, we're gonna be going over this. I guess I didn't remember that SeVEDS was a separate article last year, wasn't it? I have it in the budget, but
Yeah.
we need to do that. I think that's it.
Need to do it as an article, yeah.
Yeah, I had a note saying should we, but I had forgotten that we already did do that last year.
But we only did it as a one-time thing last year, so it would
Yeah.
have to be a one-time thing again.
Yeah.
But they have to,
No, we didn't have them petition, but we put the article on without a petition.
right, but they
But
have
it
to
will be-
request that again, when they, or we just put it on.
Yeah, well, they
Either
just did
they
tonight.
request-
That's
Oh,
how
did
I
they?
was
Oh,
reminded
yeah, I
that we
suppose
got.
so, yeah.
Yeah. We do have, the surplus from last year was 156,000, but a lot of that was set aside for, some materials. Part of it is our health reimbursement account and the painting of the town hall. So we actually have a $91,000 surplus to work with for this year's budget. So I'll work that in there once I get the numbers. We'll have to decide if we wanna put some money back in. Or we could ask the voters if we could put it in
Put
a
it towards
capital
capital,
plan.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Just found you some money, Brian. Okay, so that's just a quick update on where I'm at with the budget. A lot of the numbers are in there. Oh, the recycling containers are included in the assessment they gave me, and the assessment went down by $4,000.
Is that the one Dan sent?
Yes. Yep. Okay. So that was good news. Have an agenda.
You have to draft up the warrants,
Here's warrants.
and, is there any other business?
I haven't heard from him since the last meeting, so I didn't know if he was coming, but
Richard,
No, I'm not Richie.
okay.
weren't you the ones that talked about the drones?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm Robert.
Yeah.
Oh, Robert.
Sorry, we didn't get your name when you were in here
Sorry.
last time.
Richard's my brother that looks a lot like me for
Oh.
some reason. Could be my twin.
He could be your twin.
Yeah, he is.
There you go. That might explain it then,
So I would
wouldn't
assume
it?
he's other business because I didn't put it on the agenda because I hadn't heard from him.
Oh, okay, yeah, so, yeah, you have something?
I actually, you asked for a piece of paper that you wanted to look at before we said anything,
Yeah.
and I put a little note thing together. Just for you to read over, think about, say, man, that's really out there, or not. But I just put a little history in there and stuff, so.
Okay. Would you like us to want me to have them read it now and you guys talk about it, or do you want to come back to the next meeting? What would you like to do?
I think that if we do something, we should do it smartly together as a group that we can all agree on. Because people may not agree to that. So it's like,
I would say probably the best thing to do is for you to put, do you have this in an electronic format by any chance? That
Yeah.
you might be able to forward?
I can
hate email.
do
Okay.
it. I can.
Okay,
I
or
can-
you could just read it.
Yeah, I can just scan it.
But if we had it so we could look it over and then put it on the
Keep that
agenda for
copy
next
right
time.
there.
Yeah. Put it on the agenda for
My
next
thing
time.
is
so
the
that
bottom
it's
there, I really
recognized.
don't know how the action required. I want to make sure that people are comfortable with that. Because I feel people can get out of control in a hurry.
Yeah.
And this, I didn't realize this, but they're actually working on building that right as we speak.
I think what we need to do is, I will copy this, I will get them a copy, and so that people that are here know what we're talking about. We're talking about drones, the problem with drones and privacy and what the town might be able to do to help with that. So, and in the meantime, me do a little bit of research on what authority we even have.
Right.
Does that sound okay? No?
That sounds fair. I just wanna bring it up because it's like,
I know.
if we can stop something before it gets out of hand, that would be wonderful.
Okay,
That's just how I feel about it.
Sounds good.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You
Thank
too.
you too.
Or will you copy that and give them a copy of it before they go?
Any old business?
None.
Plenty, but nothing we're gonna talk about,
Oh, okay.
right? I mean, there is old business, we're just not talking about it. And do we need an executive session?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we enter executive session and invite for the purpose of the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, Vermont Statute 313. And we're inviting Cynthia to join us, or are we inviting anybody else present to
Brian.
join us? Brian. And Laura can be excused.
All right, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
And there will not be
Not be
any
a decision?
decisions. Well, unless you guys make a decision, I will let you know. I don't anticipate any.
Did you vote in secondary?
We're done,
Complete.
yeah.